Hi, thanks for tuning in today. Today I just wanted to do a fun video on the subject of dinosaurs, sort of. So, a lot of people who have been watching my channel also search for the term dinosaurs. The question is, why would they be searching for the term dinosaurs and also be watching my channel? Because ostensibly my channel has nothing to do with dinosaurs. I suspect it has something to do with the interest of the conservative Christian in regards to the book of Genesis and its historical accuracy. So, a number of people, quite a few people who watch this channel, I would suspect, are also young earth creationists. So, if you're a very conservative Bible believer, one of the options that you've at least considered in relationship to the book of Genesis is young earth creationism. And the people who would be interested in this subject are going to be looking at how the Bible interacts with current science, what's it speak into in regards to evolution, the age of the earth, that sort of thing. Well, I'm not an expert on any of these things, but it is something that I've thought a lot about. And also because people on my channel apparently are interested in it, I'll give you a few thoughts of my own. Again, the only thing I'm an expert on is my own opinion. But just to think about this together as friends, I think this is an in-house Christian debate when we're talking about the age of the earth. As far as evolution is concerned, I've never, in my adult years anyways, found Darwinian evolution to be all that compelling. There were some books that were influential in my early adult years, especially Philip Johnson's Darwin on Trial, and other books that I read. I was exposed to some of the work of Michael Behe and some of those others who were part of the early intelligent design movement. And I really was sort of inoculated from ever really thinking that Darwinian evolution was true. However, when I was younger and I was in junior high school, I kind of thought that maybe the Bible could be compatible with evolution, and it's just because I hadn't researched it very much. It wasn't a topic that was spoken a lot at my home at the time, and it wasn't really discussed very much in the churches that I had attended. And so it seemed to me that plausible that evolution could be compatible with the Bible. But as I got older, read some more, and began to study for myself, it just didn't seem like Darwinian evolution, just even leaving the Bible aside for a moment, from a scientific standpoint, it didn't seem all that compelling to me. Now, as far as the age of the earth, I really wrestled with that, especially in my late teens as I was thinking about these things. It seemed to me as I read my Bible that it did seem to present at least a very early date for Adam, and I still believe that's. I've made a video defending that idea, but I couldn't really wrap my head around how Adam could be a recent creation and the earth be very old. And I came under the influence of some ideas that were popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a movement among conservative scholars like C.I. Schofield, G.H. Pember, Martin Anstey, who I did a review of some of his stuff, and also people like Clarence Larkin. One day I'll do a review on this book by Clarence Larkin, A Dispensational Truth, not because I believe a whole lot of it anymore, but because it's got so many good illustrations that I say I don't believe a lot of it anymore. There's some of it that everybody's going to agree on, but there's some material that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's a really neat book. But all those people were advocating what's been called the gap theory, and I thought the gap theory was pretty compelling. I was also at the time reading people like Hugh Ross. Hugh Ross, I thought, made a pretty good case for an old Earth, but then it seemed to me like his position as far as the day-age theory. The day-age theory was the idea that there were long periods of time contained in the Hebrew word yom, and that that these were long, vast periods of time to me, anytime you gave some real careful scrutiny to that, it didn't seem like it really held up. It seemed to me that if you're talking about a 6-day work week, for example, in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 9, it says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. It seemed to me that if the Israelites were to work 6 days and rest 7, and the creation days in Genesis 1 were long periods, were vast millions of years, thousands and millions of years had elapsed, then it wouldn't make a lot of sense to tell the Israelites to work 6 days and rest 7. Likewise, when it said the evening and the morning were the first day, the evening and the morning were the second day, those didn't sound like vast periods of time, like we might say the day of the dinosaur or something like that. It just didn't seem to me to be worded in such a way that made a lot of good sense. So I did find at one point I felt like the gap theory would kind of answer that question. Well, what is the gap theory? The gap theory is the idea that there's a long gap between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. And part of the reason I thought that was a compelling view was my premillennialism. So I could take a passage like Daniel 12:2. Daniel 12:2 talks about both resurrections, the resurrection of those that have done well and the resurrection of those that have done evil. And it talks about that resurrection. The only thing that separates those resurrections was the word "and" in Daniel 12:2. It sounded like when you read Daniel 12:2 that those two resurrections happened at the same time. But because I was a premillennialist, a very strong premillennialist at the time, and I'm still thinking my way through the millennium right now. I haven't got a firm position yet. It's something I'm still wrestling with and thinking about. But because I believe that 1,000 years separated those two resurrections, and the only thing that separated them grammatically was just the word "and," but a further revelation was able to clarify that there was 1,000 years between those two resurrections. So, read Revelation chapter 20. Then I thought, well, it wouldn't be a great leap to think maybe there's a gap between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. Then I further read I was reading people like G.H. Pember, and he was giving, how the Hebrew tohu vabohu is used in other parts of the Hebrew Bible. And it seemed to make sense to me. That view seemed to make sense, and I could keep an early date for Adam. I could put a vast geological ages between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, and then most of the problems that I faced as a conservative Bible believer seemed to go away. I could account for starlight that comes from stars that are, millions of light years away. I could account for lots of things. But the problem became, as I got older and realized that this view that was popular in the 19th century and 20th century, you'll be hard-pressed now to find any serious Hebraic scholar taking that view very, very seriously. Sorry for saying serious so many times. It's hard to find anybody with a relevant degree in Hebrew who really knows Hebrew find that view compelling. And so that was troublesome. And then to find out, well, you're also hard-pressed in history to find that view emerging until like the 19th century when someone's trying to solve a problem. So it seemed a little ad hoc, a little bit special pleading. And then I also came across the fact that there were a number, and I should add to this story of my journey, is that with my once I embraced the gap theory and accepted the idea that the Earth was old, leaving aside the idea of Darwinian evolution, I I became a little bit haughty, a little proud of the fact that I believed in an old Earth, and anybody who believed in a young Earth were just not that intelligent. That was the bad attitude, the bad spirit, the bad disposition that I'd taken on with that. But then I discovered that there were people like Dr. Kurt Wise, who had studied under Stephen Jay Gould, got his degree from Harvard, and I realized that if I were ever to debate the age of the Earth with Kurt Wise, I take the old Earth position, he takes the young Earth position, I would absolutely get crushed, because this man has studied at the highest levels of academia, and he still is able to believe in a young Earth. So that humbled me quite a bit to realize how many good scientists there were out there that held to a young Earth creationist view. So at present, I'm sitting in a humbled position and curious, still learning, still investigating, but I don't want to swing to the opposite extreme and take on an arrogant young Earth creationist position. So at the moment, I think that there are considerations for the conservative Christian when it comes to the book of Genesis, and I'm in the process, too, of processing those things, considering those things, but I want to do it in a spirit of humility and recognize that the Bible is my authority. If the Bible teaches that the earth is young, then that's what I want to believe. If it allows for an old earth view, and that conforms with what's been called the book of nature, that's what I want to believe too. All truth is God's truth, so we don't need to be ashamed or afraid of any truth. So whichever way it goes, whatever direction it is, it's all God's truth, and we can have confidence and full assurance that God's word, as it's given to us in Scripture, and the testimony that we have from the heavens. It says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth forth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard." So I think there's also a testimony that comes from nature, and I believe that if we read nature correctly, understand nature correctly, understand the Bible correctly, then I think both of those will sing with one voice, a harmonious voice, and we can have great confidence that God, the Creator, wrote both books, and that we can rest assured that He knows what's best, and we can have confidence in both testimonies.